This video is for students from Tren Javier Rojo Gomez Unidad Cancun who are preparing for Cambridge Preliminary Test or PET. In this video, we're going to talk about Reading Part 3. In Reading Part 3, you're required to answer 5 comprehension questions about the text, and you choose only answers from 4 options. In this case, this is our text. It's titled On the Road in a Foreign Language. My first tip is the 4 questions out of the 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, always appear in the text in the same sequence as in the text. The 5th and final is a broader question based on the entire text or global meaning. Also, you have to remember and pay very close attention to the possible answers given, because all of them include information, but only one option answers the question in full. So let's see how it is done. For example, the first question is already answered. However, we're going to look for it in the text. How does the author feel when foreign tourists speak to him in their language? Let's go to the text. Let's start from the beginning. And we have, perhaps you don't have to, maybe you know the language and feel. He doesn't talk about how he feels, he talks about in general. So let's see the next sentence. If, on the other hand, you're anything like me, you probably feel irritated or even a little angry. So here he's talking about his own feelings, and he mentions that he feels irritated and a little angry. Both words have a negative connotation. They mean that he's not feeling positive about that. And let's see what are the possibilities. Pleased, confused, annoyed, and ashamed. In this case, pleased is completely impossible because pleased is a positive adjective, and an adjective that has a positive meaning. Then we have confused, annoyed, and ashamed. If you organize them by the level of negativity that they express, confused doesn't necessarily mean that it's negative. Then you have ashamed and annoyed. Out of the two, annoyed is the strongest one, expressing that he's not happy. So that's why annoyed is the answer. As you can see, the first question was answered pretty much in the last sentence of the first paragraph. Let's see the second question. What does the author do if he's only going to visit a country for a short time? Let's look up. And it says, when this happens to me, I do feel irritated. That's not the one. Nevertheless, I try to be polite and friendly. I use the experience to remind myself how important it is to try and learn the language. What I'm unlikely to hear is a sentence that might have some information. I use the experience when speaking to foreigners, asking him questions, to remind myself how important it is to try and learn a language, the language of the place I visit. And it says, what does the author do if he's only going to visit a country for a short time? It doesn't say what he does, so we have to continue reading. But in the next one, he says, if I'm only going to be there for a few days rather than a few weeks. So this next part of the sentence should have the information that we need. And what it says, I can at least try to learn the things I will almost certainly need to say, like greetings, hello, goodbye, the words for please and thank you. So let's see, what does the author do if he's only going to visit a country for a short time? He doesn't bother to learn the language. That's not an option because he doesn't say so. He learns how to say the things that are absolutely necessary. This is a possible answer, but let's see the others. He tries to be polite to people even if he doesn't understand them. It doesn't necessarily say that he's doing that. And he studies the language for a few weeks before he leaves home. It doesn't say that either. It does say that he's learning some very general words, but it doesn't say for how long he's learning them. So out of the 4 options, number 2 is the one that has all the information to answer. Then let's move on to number 3. according to the author, why can knowing only a few words and phrases be a problem? Not something good, but something bad. You have to pay attention to these details. So let's go we said that the answers appear in a sequence. So if we have the second one here, probably the third one would be further ahead. You might be thinking that there's not much point knowing how to ask a question like that if you're not going to be able to understand the reply. Actually, in this first sentence in the next paragraph, you already have the answer. So he says there's not much point knowing to ask a question if you're not going to be able to answer. And here we have, you can't have a proper conversation with anyone. It doesn't say that here, as you can see. You might get an answer that is too difficult for you to understand. Let's see how to ask a question like that if you're not going to be able to understand. So actually this is a possible answer, but we have to analyze the other two possibilities. You might look as if you have not tried hard enough to learn the language. At no point he says that. And you might seem to know more of the language than you actually do. He doesn't mention that either. So we're staying with our answer number 2. Let's see question number 4. According to the author, what might a local person think when a tourist tries to speak the local language? Let's see what he thinks a local person might think when somebody is trying to speak it. Let's see. That has happened to me sometimes, but I still believe that trying to say something in the local language is a good thing. At least you've shown you're willing to make an effort, and that often makes all the difference. Let's see. It says here, I'll try and help them since they've obviously tried to learn the language. Even if I try and answer their question, I don't think they will understand. Actually, no, because he says they're showing a willing to make an effort, and that often makes the whole difference. I'm in a hurry and I can't waste time trying to talk to these people. He never mentioned that. They should learn my language properly. That is completely opposite. So the only possible answer is I'll try and help them since they've obviously tried to learn my language. It says at least you've shown you're willing to make an effort. So that's, since they've obviously tried to learn my language, as you can see, that should be the correct answer. And the last question says, what is the author trying to do in this article? In this particular, I know that this is a difficult one, especially complain about foreign tourists, admit that he's not good at learning languages, telling you what to study when you learn a foreign language, persuade travelers that learning language has benefits. It says, what is the author trying to do in this article? As I mentioned in my tips, you have to look at the text as a whole, not to look for the answer in particular part of the text, but as a whole. And how can you realize what the text is, what is the intention of the writer as a whole? Usually in the beginning, as an opening, and also as a closing, you can kind of find what the general purpose of the text is. For example, he opens up with a question. How often have you had the experience of a tourist in your country asking your questions? And then, how do you feel when this happens? Perhaps you don't have any idea what they're saying. And at the end, he says, he's also talking about if you're anything like me, you're irritated. So as a general, what is he trying to do? Let's see the options. Is he trying to complain about foreign tourists? You can go for this one, but actually the point of the whole article, it's not about complaining. He's more likely giving an advice, no? So the first option is not a good option. Admit that he's not good at learning languages. Actually, if you look at it, he says that when he goes to places and he learns very little sometimes, but he's not admitting that he's not good in languages, so this is also not a possible answer. Tell you what to study when you learn a foreign language. In a way, it can be, because he tells you that you have to learn like the basics, greetings, saying goodbye, thank you, and asking for things. But as a whole, the text persuades travelers that learning languages has benefits. And especially the last sentence that says, if you just ask them in your language, they might not even bother to answer, and you will almost certainly have failed to make a new friend. Actually, if you look at it, this is stated differently. He says you will fail to make a friend, so if you rephrase that in a positive way, it would be travelers learning languages has benefits or making friends, so he's more likely to persuading you that learning the foreign language of the place where you're going is a good thing because you can make friends. And that's pretty much how it works. I know this is a tricky part of the exam, but I will upload a few exercises, and I think you're going to be good after a little bit of practice. Thank you.